Hey, what is up guys? We're going to be doing a deck profile for the Yosenjus, or if you would like to call them with the old school name, the Hermit Yokais. Now this deck I think is super underrated. All the cards are relatively cheap, minus the Daibok over here, which is getting a little bit of hype, because if they get some more pendulum support, I think this deck could be an amazing pendulum deck, because it's super all-in and really easy to OTK with this deck, if you happen to have the right hand with the pendulum build. Now this is not the pendulum build. I'll do another build later in the future if they get some more cards, but the pendulum build currently right now, I feel like they need a scout. If they have a scout, this deck is just on some next level stuff. But nonetheless, it's a relatively budget friendly deck, especially since Vandy's emptiness is really easy to access now, and it doesn't even affect this deck pretty much at all. And the deck, like I said, is pretty easy to play, pretty budget friendly, and it can actually do a lot of work, especially against decks that can only summon 1 or 2 monsters per turn. But anyways, let's go and jump right into the deck profile, explain how the deck kind of runs. If you guys maybe already saw it on the live stream, you'll understand that this deck, it's a really decent deck, but against some of the other decks that like to be able to go all in and maybe they summon a Denkoseka, yeah, this deck probably would lose to something that goes Denkoseka, especially this build. But nonetheless, against other decks like Nekroz, this can actually have an excellent matchup. As long as you happen to have the card that can bounce back and basically you have one of these as set, you'll be good to go. And I've been doing a lot of testing, and this card is actually awesome. I hated this card for a while, but anyways, let's go ahead and go into the deck profile. If you're just here to net deck, I'll put a link down below in the description box. But let's get started. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of the combo 1, 2, and 3. They are still actually called the Hermit Yokais on DevPro. So if you're searching them, you're going to have to type in Hermit Yokai, just as a heads up. But nonetheless, I'm playing 3 copies of each one. They're almost reminding me of 6 Samurais. Basically, you have to have another Hermit Yokai or Yosenju to actually activate their effects. They all get the effect to normal summon an additional time, so you can pot a duality and special, and normal summon all 3, and then do a bunch of damage and set a cylinder and then win game right there. That's the way that this build is oriented, and it's really good at that, because you have 3 dualities, you have 3 copies of Tanky, and this can also search out a card. So it's not too uncommon to be able to maybe throw in 2 monsters, next turn throw down 3 monsters, and just kind of win game from there. But anyways, this card's effect, again, they all have that effect where when you normal summon it, you can summon another Hermit Yokai, of course, except for the same copy of itself. So basically, just normal. This one can attack directly. This one over here can bounce back a face-up card your opponent controls, and then this one, once you inflict battle damage with a Hermit Yokai other than itself, you get to search your deck for a Hermit Yokai card, which usually ends up being this, just so you can secure the play next turn, which this negates anything as long as you control a Hermit Yokai card. Next, I'm playing 1 Regeki, 3 Duality, because you can normal summon for days. 3 MSTs, it's really important to play this card, even though you're unaffected by vanities. Very few Nekroz will be playing any traps, but the traps that they will playing are pretty much, from what I've seen, it's torrential, bottomless, sometimes compulse, but you really need to have all of your cards, and you can't really get your summon negated, otherwise you have no plays. And your field will always be blank in Hermit Yokais or your Yosenjus. That's basically how they designed the deck, is to be like, oh, you go all in and then everything returns. Almost reminds me of Spirit cards, if you guys remember the spirits, not to be confused with the Ritual Beast or Spirit Beast, but just the spirit monsters where when you summon them, they go back to the hand. That's only if you normal summon them. There is one card that we're using that does special summon, but we'll get into that later, because I think this card is just amazing. But nonetheless, the basic play in the deck is to normal summon a copy of each. You're able to bounce back a card, then search a card, and then you set it, and next turn you repeat the whole process and you make a game. But in this build, you don't need to do that. You just need to do it once. You basically summon 1 copy of each, bounce back, attack with everything, set 1 copy of something, and you win the game. But yeah, we're playing Regeki. We got 3 Duality, we got 3 MST. Again, your summons are very important in this deck, because you only have 9 monsters, and because you will basically leave your field completely blank, because that's the way the Hermit Yokais work anyways, or your Yosenjus. Then we're playing 3 Yokai Shrine of Trials. Interesting thing, this does not count as a Yosenju or Hermit Yokai card, so this will not work with this card. If you really want to, I actually considered playing the Hermit Yokai, they call them L and R, I believe, in the TCG, but anyways, that's a pretty decent effect too. For Hermit Yokai monster would be destroyed by battle over card effect, you can destroy this card instead. So this would be the only one I would actually play. I wouldn't actually try to play the pendulum build as of right now. It can be good, don't get me wrong, but the thing is, just opening up with it is just kind of conditional, and you can lose a lot easier because of clogging hands and stuff like that. But yeah, this card, like I said, it does not count as Hermit Yokai or a Yosenju card, but the most important thing actually with this is the boost that you get. The 3 counters, you can add 1, I feel like it's definitely a little bit slower, but an off chance that, you know, your opponent opens up bad, maybe you can definitely utilize it. But that 300 boost to everything is definitely nice because if you have 3 of them, which is the optimal thing, plus like a tanky, that's basically 1200 extra points of damage, which in a case where they just summon something with 1900 attack, you can actually make a game, which we'll get into later. But for the most part, I just love having this card just because that attack boost is just so nice. Next up, 3 tanky, it searches out everything in the deck. Snatch Steal because it's OP. Then we got Divine Wind of Mist Valley, which is so good in the deck because all of them, when you normal summon, they all come back to the hand. That's basically how the deck is oriented, and you're able just to special summon one, and it just lets you have a monster on board. And the off chance that you're able to protect the monster, which hopefully you can do, you can actually just kind of work off of that next turn and just add extra damage to your next turn play. And you'll actually have Hermit, Yokai, or Yosenju, whatever you like to call them, on board already, and then you'll have the, the effects. And next up, a Stellar Warning, Compulse, Bottomless, and Torrential. I feel like these are the most relevant trap cards in the game. The only thing that I really feel like this has a bad matchup against is if someone goes Denko Seka, go in, all in, because you will have no monsters, because that's how the deck is oriented. It's not even like this build is bad because I have no monsters on board. That's how the Yosenju archetype is they all return to the hand the turn that they were normal summon. Of course, unless we get this card, which is a one of. But, anyways, you're playing 3-cylinder, 3-dimensional wall, which is basically the same thing as cylinder. Although it does not negate the attack, they just take the battle damage instead. And then 3 copies of Vanities, because it pretty much does not affect you. I mean, it can in random scenarios, but for the most part, it can't really affect you. And then 3 copies of the Secret Technique of the Yosenju or Hermit Yokai, which basically makes it so once you go in, if you're adding the card with the effect of the Shrine of Trials. Next turn, you normal summon. If they have Torrential, whatever, you just activate it because you control a Yosenju, and then you proceed to do the same play over and over. If you really need this card to be active during your opponent's turn, the card that I can recommend is just this card right here. Do not play the red face. Play the blue face, whatever this one is. It's either L or R in the TCG, but anyways, this card makes it so it's like protection for the deck too, and I kind of like it for that. But for the most part, like I said, I don't like the pendulum build. I'll do a pendulum build for you guys definitely. So if you're out on the lookout for that, don't worry, I'll do that in the future. Again, it just comes down to consistency, and I like the way that this deck plays, especially against a deck like Nekroz, where generally they're not going to be throwing out like 4 monsters turn 1. They're usually like 1 monster, 2 monster per turn, and this deck can just eat that up alive, especially since it can bounce back cards, and then you won't have anything in the graveyard too often. Because even if you activate Tenki, it's not like a Rhoda. The card is going to sit there on board, so they're not going to Trish you, which could technically hurt you if they activated Trish at the right time. But nonetheless, I think this deck has a decent matchup against Nekroz, as long as you have 1, 2, and 3. Or it's more so just having the 1 and the 3, because being able to bounce back the card is really important. But as far as the extra deck, I'm playing 1 copy of everything pretty much. I am playing 2 copies of Chidori. I find this card to be very important instead of playing like 2 copies of whatever one or whatever, because this lets you get rid of a back row and a face-up monster. So I like this card much better for that. And then I'm also playing 1 copy of the Harpy's Pet Phantasmal Dragon. This card, excellent, excellent card. Don't drop out this card because random scenarios, you won't use it very often, but in the right times, it can be very helpful. It's basically like 82, but it has some extra utility because maybe your opponent happens to be able to go like all in next turn. And then we have like Cowboy. Other cards I considered for the deck were Gores originally. I actually really like this card that's not out yet, and I know that people want to build the deck because it's out right now, so you can't play this card because it's not out. But Stardust Respark is excellent. Again, it came down to the problem I had with the Hermit Yokai is that if my opponent went all in, I didn't really have anything to rebuttal with, because like I said, the way the deck is oriented is you have no monsters. But even if you're playing the Pendulum build, because when this card is special summoned through Pendulum, it can actually only be special summoned through Pendulum, but it's going to return to the hand during the end phase. So basically, the deck is oriented around either OTK or basically survive next turn, then you can just finish off whatever you didn't finish off the previous turn. But the deck can definitely play with Macro and Defissure. But I felt like these cards, like, they're so oriented around having turn 1, and only certain decks can really lose to these cards. A lot of decks can technically lose to that, but for the most part, I kind of just like having the consistency, just having the cards that I like to have, but that's my personal preference. I also consider more Dark Hole, but I mean, you get a bounce back card and you're unaffected by a lot of stuff. It's not like someone's going to go first turn Jin lock you and you lose, because like, you're just like, oh, I don't care, just bounce back the card. And then from there, you just attack for, almost 6,000 points of damage. But as far as other cards that I wanted to mention, I didn't think Maxi or Veiler were too bad in this, because again, it all came down to you didn't have anything on board, because all of them go back to the hand. So I considered Maxi and Veilers for extra protection, and the offense had Denko, but I also consider my body a shield because I really wanted to make this deck like an all-in deck, but I feel like this is perfectly fine because like these cards definitely help out protect yourself. I also considered Gores at one point, but this card kind of makes it so you can't use Gores. But if you want to drop this card completely and play Gores, maybe, I mean, you can still definitely keep it in the cylinders because you just activate them. And then being able to have a Gore, it's a normal, it's really, really good. But I like this card a lot. So if you want to drop this card completely, and of course drop this card too if you're going to be playing like double Gores. Because if you are able to go ahead and Gores, and you have like a Gores plus a token, and then you have 3 normal summons, usually that ends up being game anyways, but this actually helps out a ton too. This card is also excellent, but remember that all of the face-up monsters you control have to be Hermit Yokai. This does not count as a Hermit Yokai or Yosenju card, sorry. I keep on calling them Hermit Yokais, but Hermit Yokai or Yosenju, it's the same thing basically. But it's just the TCG and OCG name difference. But the reason why I like this card is it really helps out because if you have a Tenki, plus this card is 1200 extra points of damage, and that means as long as your opponent summons something with 1900 or more and tries to attack you, you win the game. After you get your attack in. So let me go ahead and actually do the math for you guys. I know I'm bad at math, but I think I figured this out because I've been playing it a lot, and some of you guys already saw it in the live stream. But basically, this is like an optimal hand. Having Tenki, having one of these, and then 1 copy of each. And of course, you can Tenki for whatever one you don't have, and you have duality. So it's not like I'm asking for is like a super sack hand. Like it's normal if you play the deck to open up with 1 copy of each. Or just like 1 of number 1, 1 of number 2, and just Tenki for the rest, or duality, whatever. The point is you're getting 1 of each, and then you're gonna have this card on board as well as Tenki. So this card's gonna have 3 counters, or I mean, again, it depends on your hand, but for the most part, like I said, we're gonna just use this as an example. So you get a total of 1200 attack because you're gonna have 3 monsters that will total up to 300 with the effect of this, and then 100 each for this. So that's going to be a total of 1200, unless my math is bad. But yeah, so we got 300 for each Hermit Yokai, so that's gonna be 300 for each one. So that's 300 plus 300 plus 300, and then Tenki is also gonna boost them up by an additional 100 each. So we'll multiply that times 3, and we'll get 300. So there we go. We have 1200 right there. Okay, so we don't need to add any of the extra attack. Then we're gonna go ahead and add 18, and then this one has 1600 attack, and then this one over here has 1500 attack, which means we only need to deal, we'll subtract 8,000 from this, and that means we only need to deal 1900 more points of damage, which in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's very common that someone summons a monster with 1900 more attack. So from there, 1 cylinder can make a game. I don't really like it because of that. This card also has the utility to search out this card. So if you don't get to finish off your opponent through that, maybe the MSC or cylinder or something like that, next turn what you do is make sure you add this card. This is a card that more than likely you will be adding. Again, you're going to have 2 counters at this, but you know, you can go ahead and just use your judgment. If you're like, you know what, I think he's going to summon something with a bunch of attack, then you don't have to remove this. Because you can just cylinder them for a game anyways. But if, you know, on the off chance you know that, oh, he's for sure going to summon something with 1900 attack, then yeah, just cylinder them for game. But more than likely you don't need to actually do the boost, but like I said, it just works out well for the math. Again, if they happen to have something that's just going to attack for like 19. But yeah, like I said, if they have to be able to make something stronger, then don't do that play. Just search out this card, and then what you're going to do next turn, because these all return to your hand, whether you cylinder or not, whatever, as long as you're able to protect yourself, you don't lose that turn. You set this card, and the next turn what you do is you go ahead and then normal. If they have anything, you just negate it, and then from there you just win the game. That's how the Hermit Yokais play in this particular build. Like I said, I'll make some other builds later on, and I think they'll probably get more support. This card is amazing, though. It's one of the cards I think that has a lot of potential in the Hermit Yokais to just be absolutely amazing. Again, it just comes down to them having like a easier way to pendulum, because at the moment the deck is way too slow to be able to really compete with the meta, because getting 3 counters, then searching out 1, and then you have to search out the other, unless you happen to open up amazing, and then you have to go for the Diebok, and then again, that's going to return to your hand. So it's like you gotta for sure be able to go for it, otherwise you're not going to be able to do anything. Although this card does technically have the ability to protect your plays, because it can destroy itself as a pendulum card, but maybe they'll go ahead and get rid of it once you complete your scale. But nonetheless, that's the deck profile. Let me know what you guys think. Try it out yourself. Let me know how you like the deck. If you have any suggestions to change it up, let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, it's a pretty good deck to have a matchup against a deck that only likes to revolve their plays around like 1 monster per turn or something like that, or like 1 or 2 monsters, because you're just going to bounce it back and then use attack, and then you set the cylinder and then go ahead and make a game. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Asian Eyes signing out.